Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of This Week in Hockey East with Bridget Prue. I'm Eric Galanti. We're starting to get into the thick of the regular season, non-conference action. A couple of exciting games to tell you about this week. Looking forward to talking all about it. Bridget, we have a really great show for you in store today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We're going to be joined by Dean Letourneau, Bruins prospect, BC forward in the second segment. So definitely stay tuned for that too.
Yes, looking forward to it. BC with the massive game against Denver. We're going to talk about that momentarily. But let's start with our Hockey East game that we're going to showcase on NESN. It's a Saturday game this week, and it's the UNH Wildcats who play host to red-hot Quinnipiac. UNH is kind of in an interesting spot because their win against Michigan State the opening weekend of the season actually looks even better now than it maybe did a week ago after Michigan State came in and swept Boston University, now the number one team in the country. UNH gets LIU on Friday and then Quinnipiac on Saturday as they try to bounce back from their 4-1 loss to Merrimack last week. You know, you look at this matchup, UNH and Quinnipiac played some really good, interesting, and important games the last couple of years. They're 2-2 against each other the last couple of seasons. UNH has had a key win over Quinnipiac 2 years in a row, which has sort of propelled them into the early part of the season. You look at 2023, that massive overtime win, which was the big driver of that great start for UNH. They had a 3-2 win last year as well down at Quinnipiac. We mentioned the loss to Merrimack. They're trying to bounce back from that. This is only the fourth and fifth game of the season for UNH, whereas for Quinnipiac, it's their seventh game and eighth game of the year. So it's a little bit different there. And, you know, UNH, which reports are from Mike McMahon that Marty Lavin's going to be out for a little while. So where is that scoring coming from? Well, it was a nice game for Felix Gagnon, who scored a goal last week. He comes out of the queue. Again, we talk all about CHL guys who are now eligible this year. At one time, he was named the best defensive forward in the queue, so he's a player that UNH is really excited to have in. But this is a huge challenge. Quinnipiac totally looks the part. We saw them beat Boston College early this year. We saw them come from behind, down 3-0 against Maine in the first period last week to get a tie Friday and then turn around and get a victory on Saturday. Even the one game they lost against Alaska, which was a little bit of an oddity in the icebreaker, but they still hadn't expected goals of nearly 4 in that game. They were 0 for 4 on the power play. Since then, they've scored 7 times on the power play. So there's a lot to like about this Quinnipiac team. They had 70 shots in 2 games against Maine. So a really good challenge for UNH and what should be a great game on Saturday night right here on NESN.
Yeah, and then another matchup to highlight this week. We said we're going to talk to Dean Letourneau later while his BC Eagles are playing Denver this weekend. And they've had a good response since that loss to Quinnipiac they had on their opening night. They had a win and a tie against number 12 Minnesota, then a win at RPI, and they've been getting off to better starts compared to that Quinnipiac game. The Eagles have 30-plus shots in the first 2 periods in each of their last 3 games, and the power play has been pretty good. Limited sample size, but 3 for 7 so far. And Ryan Conmey, who came over transferring from UNH, has 2 of those power play goals, so he's had an impact there as well. And then James Hagens, another Bruins prospect, got on the board for 2 goals against RPI last weekend. He has points in all 4 games, 12 shots on goal in the last 3 games in that unbeaten streak for Boston College. And Dean Letourneau, he's been awesome. We'll talk to him later on and talk a little bit more about his offensive output so far this season. And then you look into the net, and Luca Cloutier in net so far started his first game at Minnesota, and he's been great. He has a .937 save percentage in his 3 starts, all of those coming on the road. And now BU has a chance to back up the last few weeks. And of course, it's once again Denver standing in the way here. Denver is going to be a completely different challenge. It's a well-coached David Carl team. Those teams don't give up a lot of grade A chances. And Denver also has a history of doing well against Hockey East opponents. They have 9 wins and 2 losses against Hockey East schools over the last 2 seasons, including going 5-0 against Hockey East teams in the NCAA tournament.
It's crazy. It's crazy how good they've been, and it creates a real challenge. And I think the point you just made is a really interesting one, right? We think we've seen a nice response here from Boston College, and once again, it's Denver in the way. It feels like it always is. It's becoming a really great rivalry. These 2 teams have played a bunch, but that's not Denver's only game this weekend. They're going to play at BC on Friday, and then they go to Matthews for a final time to take on Northeastern on Saturday. This is also a return trip from last year when Northeastern went out to Denver and they played 2 games at Magnus Arena. Northeastern with a really nice road win last week at UMass. We talked about UMass on the show. They had played extremely well. Well, Northeastern dominated that first period. They outshot UMass 12-3. They looked really good offensively to get a victory. Giacomo Martino is someone who really stood out, scored the game winner, the eventual game winner in that game. Already has 2 goals this year. So we've talked so much about major junior guys, right, Bridget? But let's not sleep on the USHL guys, which had always been the bread and butter of college hockey recruits coming in. And Martino led the USHL last year with 74 points. He's one of a couple of different players that Northeastern has that really performed extremely well at the USHL. So how do those guys come in and bring their gaudy numbers to Northeastern? How does that shape itself out this year? It'll be interesting to see for the Huskies. Obviously, all these games early in the season, especially at home, are important, as we know that Matthews Arena is going to only be open until December. We're going to talk more about that next week. We'll have Northeastern on Nesson against BC. But really good test for Northeastern and a couple of outstanding challenges for Denver and what should be a couple of outstanding games. BC and Denver should be awesome. Already sold out Friday night. And we're going to talk to the Eagles sophomore, Dean Letourneau. That's coming up right here on This Week in Hockey East. Welcome back, folks, to This Week in Hockey East. It's time to bring in our guest for today's episode, brought to you by Boston Children's Hospital, the official children's hospital of Hockey East. We're so glad to be joined by Eagles sophomore and Bruins former first-round pick in 2024, Dean Letourneau. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We've talked a little bit about it in the first segment. You guys have bounced back really well from opening night against Quinnipiac, unbeaten in your last 3. You've played extremely well. What's the biggest thing that stood out to you so far here in your first month of your sophomore year?
Yeah, I mean, just all the work you put in throughout the summer, all the time in the spring training, just getting better every day. I know that first Quinnipiac game, we didn't expect that outcome, but we put in a lot of work after that. And we're looking like a really good team right now, and we're going into a big weekend against Denver where they knocked us out of the tournament last year. So this is going to be a good revenge game against them.
You've been off to a great start so far this season. What are some of the things that you worked on in the summer to allow you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of skill work, just using my shot, kind of gaining my confidence back, which I've had going into the season so far this year. And then just my compete, just playing hard. My coach has been on me about it, just competing, not worrying about the points, just doing all the little things, and those points will keep coming. So
obviously only a couple of games in, but how gratifying is it to have that production so far?
Yeah, I mean, it feels pretty good knowing that your hard work's paying off a little bit. Now at the end of the day, those points don't really mean nothing, but now just kind of continue going forward and putting the work in to get some more.
Dean, most of us have not ever been 6'7", and one of the things that gets talked about a lot is when you're 6'7" and when you're a bigger guy, it sometimes takes a little longer to develop the style of game that is expected of someone your size to play in the NHL. What's been the biggest learning thing from you as you've tried to adjust to, first of all, growing to 6'7" as quickly as you did, and then now playing that style and that type of hockey that is going to be expected as you continue in your career?
Yeah, I mean, just being able to use my size. I know the last few years it kind of looks like I haven't really been using my size as much, and I've been learning throughout the last few years, especially my time at Boston College, where my coach has been teaching me how to use my body and gain body position, and I think that's allowed the game to be a little more easier for me, and I don't have to get myself out of position. I can use my gifts that I was given with my height and my reach. And just create body position and make the game a little easier for me.
You got to participate in Bruins development camp this year. 2-part question. First of all, how fun was that? What was that like just on a personal level? And was there anything you took from some of the coaching there that you're applying this year?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of fun. I know there's a lot of guys on my team this year that were at camp, and all the returners from my first year. So it was good to see all those guys and practice with them on the ice. And the biggest thing I kind of learned with them is again, just using my size and being able to use my hands and my reach to my advantage, and also using my feet. When I can use my feet and my size, I can be pretty tough to handle. So those have been the main points I was learning at camp and continuing going forward now.
Dean, you mentioned it. The next thing we're going to ask you about is the fact that you guys are basically Bruins University at this point, right? With all the Bruins draft picks on the BC roster. What is that like? Not just having all of those guys with you, but also playing in the community that the team that drafted you obviously is in, just right down the road. What is the whole kind of Bruins community and bringing that into Boston College? What's that been like as a player for you?
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. Just playing with a bunch of prospects that they have who hopefully will be future teammates in the next few years. And the Bruins community, we actually just went to the Bruins game last night against Florida. So it was nice to just be in the arena, kind of soak it all in from a fan perspective. And the building was pretty juiced last night with Marchand's return. So it was pretty cool to see.
Who was your favorite NHL team growing up?
I was actually a Pittsburgh Penguins fan growing up. Just Sidney Crosby was my favorite player. And then when I started to get older, I kind of got pushed into being more of an Ottawa fan as well, just growing up in Ottawa, watching Daniel Alfredson and Carlson. So those are probably my two favorite teams growing up.
Are there any current NHL players that you look at and say, okay, these guys are maybe a similar build to me or have a similar style to me and I can emulate that?
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of Tage Thompson. He's a big, tall, right shot centerman who's got some skill, and so I like to watch his game and try to model my game after him and the way he plays. My coaches show me a lot of video of his puck protection and how he uses his hands and his body to make plays, and so I've been trying to utilize that to put into my game.
All right, we got a few little fun ones to end here. First of all, we just kind of want to get your college vibe. For what major are you?
I'm a communications major, and then I'm going to do a business minor as well.
Very nice. And so when you go to the cafeteria, what's the go-to meal?
I usually get 2 burger patties and then rice on the side. So it's pretty simple, but put some soy sauce, some chipotle mayo on there, and it tastes pretty good. So
I don't know if I've ever had that before. Okay, it's an interesting one. And if you got the aux cord, what music are you putting on, and what artists, what genre, what do you like?
oh, I'd never get the aux cord on my team. I like rap. I listen to a lot of rap music, and not a lot of guys in the team are a fan of rap in the morning or at 11:30 in the morning. So I usually never get it, but I'll play a lot of Drake or Future. Those are my two favorite artists. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Dean. Eric, did you have anything else?
Well, I thought you were going to ask about your Taylor Swift question of what you're asking everybody what they think of the Taylor Swift album.
Yeah. Can you settle an argument? Was the new Taylor Swift album good or bad?
I actually haven't listened to the new one. I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan.
Okay. Well, that
That's all right.
doesn't hold the debate here.
Dean, last one. You got this huge matchup with Denver. You talked about it. There's a little bit of the revenge factor, but what's the biggest thing that you guys are looking at this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, just playing our game. I know when we play our game, we'll be a tough team to handle, like you saw in Minnesota. So just moving pucks fast, getting on the forecheck. So I know when we play that game, we play our style. We're a tough team to handle. So we'll just go out there and play and see what happens.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time, Dean. Continued success this year. It's been fun to watch, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
That's Dean Letourneau, Boston Bruins first-round pick and member of Boston College. We'll talk more around Hockey East when we come back on This Week in Hockey East.
Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. Let's take a look around the Women's Hockey East schedule, including some conference matchups this upcoming weekend. We want to start right off with UConn. The Huskies have won 4 of their 6 games so far this season, coming off wins in 3 in a row against top 15 ranked teams. Most recently, a shutout win for grad goalie Tia Chan. She's our Jersey Mike's sub above Women's Player of the Week. She's been so solid in her entire career with UConn, but I feel like she's even gotten better now that she's in her final season. Her experience is really showing. Maybe she's a Patty Kaz recipient at the end of the season that goes to the most valuable player in women's hockey. She's certainly put her hat in that ring so far. And UConn is the highest ranked Hockey East team right now among the women, 8th in the USCHO.com poll. They moved up from 11th after 2 wins last weekend against a ranked Princeton team. and they outscored the Tigers 5-1 on the weekend. Some other ranked women's teams right now: Northeastern at 12 and BU at 15. And Eric, it's BU UNH in a single game series on Friday.
Yeah, we're still not a ton of Hockey East games yet. We'll get there in the next couple of weeks, but BU UNH, as we mentioned, we haven't talked a ton of UNH yet, but they're 3-3-1, but notably 3-1-1 in the month of October so far. So they've been pretty good this month, coming off a tight loss to Harvard. But the thing that stands out still is, they've only given up 5 goals in their last 5 games. So they've been really sharp. You look at what they've done up front a little bit. Nina Ross, a freshman, Allison Hush, who had 11 goals last year. She's been really good to start. And then Kelly Hardy, who's taken a huge jump. She has already tied her career goal total in the first 7 games of this season that she had in her first 3 years at UNH. So all real positives for New Hampshire as they try to take on this BU team, Bridget, that's looking to, find a way to get in the win column for the first time this week.
Yeah, it's time for them to have kind of a get right game. And as somebody who broadcasts their games, I've noticed that they've been playing with a lot of intensity. It's not an effort thing, but they haven't won their first 5 games of the season. They started out against 2 really, really difficult teams. Number 3, Minnesota, was going to be a tough task, and it was on the schedule for a reason, to make sure that Tara Watchhorn and her team knew what it was going to take to beat one of the top teams in the country. They also lost to Colgate, another top 10 team. And then last week against Brown, they dropped that game 2-1. They scored the first goal. But I think one thing to focus on here for them, after I'm sure they worked on it in practice this week, is the power play. I think they have great talent on their power play units, but they're 0 for 18 so far with the advantage. They're generating shots, but Tara Watchorn said they're too perimeter. She wants them to be more concentrated in the middle of the zone, more high danger chances, if you will. So they have some young players, though, that are pretty versatile, that she's been moving around her forward group. Lexi Bertelson, Aneska Shabalova, those are players who are already acclimated to college hockey. So that's good news that they're already at NCAA speed.
Just the other Hockey East game, Boston College will be up at Merrimack. BC can go to 3-0 in Hockey East play. We've talked a lot about Ava Thomas, 8th nationally with 12 points this year. That's the most in Hockey East. Merrimack does have a nice win over Clarkson earlier in the season. They've played 5 straight on the road here in October before they'll be home this weekend. The other big one is Providence going out to St. Thomas. That's a doubleheader of the men and the women to open the new building at St. Thomas, which is supposed to be outstanding. St. Thomas on the women's side is ranked, so that's a real challenge for Providence, who's coming off a weekend split against Clarkson. We're going to wrap things up with a couple other men's games to tell you about. That is coming up here on This Week in Hockey East.
Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. I'm Bridget Prue here with Eric Galante. It's time to go around Hockey East, presented by Boston Harbor Hotel. Plan your fall getaway today at bostonharborhotel.com and experience Boston's best waterfront views. Eric, not many league games in action, but the BU UConn series stands out.
Yeah, a little rematch of the Hockey East semis last year. I think that UConn's pretty much been what we've expected so far, right? Couple of splits. They split with Colorado College, a split with Ohio State last weekend. The thing that really stood out after they won Friday is Saturday. It felt like they got not just chances, but a lot of grade A chances. It felt like everybody who came away from that game thought they did. They just couldn't quite finish. We're 1 for 6 on the power play. But, they're bringing a lot back, but you are losing guys like a Hudson Shandor, like a John Spetz, who are so important in terms of the leadership of the group, and it's piecing together some of the other stuff. We saw both goalies this weekend. Mike Kavanaugh obviously had a ton of success with 2 goalies last year. So really good challenge here for UConn. They've pretty much been tested all through the slate so far: Colorado College, Ohio State, and now right into BU.
Yeah, this is BU's first conference matchup of the season. Last weekend, they played against number 3 Michigan State, really big physical team. They lost the first game and then lost in overtime in the second game on Saturday in pretty heartbreaking fashion. It looked like Cole Eiserman had scored an overtime game-winning goal. It ends up getting reviewed and called no goal, and Michigan State had gone down and scored at the other end, so it ends in a loss. But Jay Pandolfo after the game said, I think that the refs got it right. It just didn't quite go over, and you couldn't quite see white between the puck and the line. So 4-3 loss there. And Pandolfo saying that he was happier Saturday with the effort than he was on Friday night, in particular the second and third periods of Saturday night. He also highlighted a few players that he thought gave a spark in the comeback that forced the overtime. Kamil Bednarik was great on the penalty kill and scored a shorthanded goal. He was somebody that was really noticeable. And a few other guys, Brendan Svoboda, Pandolfo said he played great from start to finish, playing back at center. And two freshmen, Conrad Fondrick, who's coming back after a bad lower body injury last year, scored his first goal as a Terrier, and Ben Merrill was doing great, using his body, winning puck battles against some big Michigan State players. The only thing I will say about BU coming into this weekend, I'm not sure if Sasha Boisvert will be back. He played Friday, missed Saturday, said he wasn't feeling 100%. He's their top line center when he's healthy, but he's been dealing with a lingering upper body injury that he suffered 3 weeks ago in the exhibition game against RPI.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. That was a great series anytime those two teams played last year. I want to talk about Merrimack before we sign off for today. They start their weekend against Quinnipiac. We mentioned Quinnipiac at New Hampshire on Saturday, Merrimack, Quinnipiac Friday, then they'll play LIU on Saturday. Merrimack with back-to-back wins here against Lowell and then against UNH. All three of their games have been in Hockey East play so far. They're 2-1. They've scored 9 goals over the last 2 games, and 13 guys already have a point on those 9 goals. So they've spread it out. Couple of guys that it's worth noting here. First of all, Parker Lalonde's been awesome. 4 goals already, second in Hockey East in goals and points per game. A freshman who comes in after a couple of really huge years in the BCHL, well over a point per game in each of the last 2 years for Brooks out there. He had a hat trick against UNH in the game last week. He's also, I know that people don't love plus minus anymore in the hockey world, but he's +6 in 3 games for whatever it's worth. So, certainly not a bad thing. And the other guy is Justin Gill. And again, going to our conversation, he's someone who's played 2 games so far. We weren't sure whether he was going to be eligible or not. He was kind of waiting around campus to see if he'd be eligible. That's because he split time last year between the ECHL and the AHL because he came from, again, major juniors. But a couple of guys, there's a handful of guys who have been granted eligibility. It's a little bit more complicated than for us to get into with just a couple of minutes left in the show. But it is something you're going to see this year. A couple guys who have played pro, but still have been able to retain their eligibility. Anyway, he's here and he's been really good, right? He's 3rd in Hockey East in points per game. So, there might be something here with Merrimack. They've been very good so far.
Yeah, and a quick note on UVM as well. They split on the road against St. Cloud, and shout out to Aiden Wright. He made 85 saves across the 2 games, huge 45 save performance, and an overtime win on Friday, and then even made 40 saves in the loss on Saturday. So if they get goaltending like that, it's going to be fun to see UVM and how they do this year. They're off this weekend, though, back in action next weekend against UNH.
You talk about him and you talk about, Lowell played Western Michigan last week and Austin Elliott. And again, Aiden Wright obviously won the game on Friday. I thought Austin Elliott was awesome against Western Michigan. I thought he was really good. On Friday, he made 29 straight saves after Western scored a couple goals early. Western does hang on for the win. Saturday, Western kind of just overwhelmed Lowell, but I thought that Elliott was pretty good in that game too. In the first couple periods, the score was kind of out of hand, so Norm, pulled him and went to the other goalie. But I thought he was really good. So, you mentioned Luca Cloutier before. So maybe a couple freshmen goalies that we're going to be talking about throughout Hockey East this year. But it should be fun to see. Again, remember our NESN Showcase game this week is Saturday this week as UNH hosts Quinnipiac. But there's so much more going on around Hockey East. We can't wait to keep diving in and seeing what happens this season. For Bridget, I'm Eric. Thanks so much for joining us. And we can't wait to talk to you again next week. You've been watching This Week in Hockey East.